Hello folks. So recently I was watching the movie Backrooms, which is essentially a kind of horror movie about essentially these different layers of reality that are subverted reflections of one another, and the characters that attempt to traverse the depths of these reflected realities essentially. The various characters have to grapple with their past traumas and repressed feelings as they encounter monsters in these backrooms, quote unquote. So reflecting upon some of the core themes of this movie and thinking about it, I've come to think of a few things, in fact. One of them is that the movie very much is a metaphor for the mind and for reality as it is. In the movie, it is asserted that the various layers of these backrooms, the various reflections of reality that are in these backrooms, quote unquote, is all that ever was. These various layers are further subverted or perverted, rather, mirror images of the essential outside world or reality of that world. It is essentially touching upon the uncanny valley, that things which are quite similar to our reality or quite similar to us, incredibly similar in fact, but not quite the same. There is thus that horror that can be found in things which are us but not quite us, that there is something wrong with them that we can't quite put our finger on. Like has been mentioned, each layer is a distorted, diluted mirror image of the next layer, and if you go down enough, it may appear completely different or unrecognizable from the essential reality which it is supposedly reflecting. And there is always some degree of similarity, of course, regardless of what layer you reach, but inevitably the differences compound so much over layers that it may become unrecognizable in one way or another. The human reflections, or the reflections of the people in these layers, appear monstrous in many cases. In many cases they are without emotions, without ego, and hence you can see why I am going for this angle of it being a kind of diluted, distorted mirror image. It is taking on this human form, but it is not really human, it is not really conscious. It doesn't really have this full consciousness, and neither is it a fully sentient being. It is a diluted mirror image of that conscience. It is a diluted mirror image of that form, but it does not carry the characteristics of that form, hence it is not quite human. We also encounter essentially unthinking monsters roaming these realms of infinite layers, and of course our main character, his kind of mirror image reflection in one of these layers is essentially this kind of unthinking, but really in a weird way quite emotionally charged monster. You know, you can see the emotions on his face despite not being fully sentient or a fully conscious being. Of course, as we learn of throughout the movie, the main character is dealing with his own traumas, his own personal feelings. He recently went through relationship troubles with his partner, and hence the depths of his subconscious carrying such darkness, quote unquote, or carrying these repressed feelings of anger and of heartbreak are reflected in this perverted mirror image of this monster, which is a reflection of the darkness of the subconscious of our main character. It very much is also a metaphor for traversing the depths of the mind, attempts to compartmentalize and to reorganize or attempt to organize the different layers of the subconscious, of different memories, of different, aspects of reality, so to speak. However, there is always a degree of continuity from one memory to another. And this goes to show a point which I have made in certain past videos, that reality is very much continuous and not discrete, in that one layer leads onto another, or one reality gives way to another. And it is not the case that they are merely discrete things which can necessarily be easily categorized into fixed boxes, so to speak. You cannot view things merely in isolation from one another. Many different variables have to be considered, and one reality can be viewed through many different lenses. these different aspects of reality fundamentally intertwine with one another to give expression to the complex labyrinth of reality. I think this also does touch upon the kind of extra-mental and mental distinction in that there is a reality outside the mind, but there is also a kind of reality wherein, there are the imaginations of the mind. And oftentimes, in philosophical circles, there is a discussion about whether extra-mental reality exists or not, or, if anything really exists outside the mind, for example. And there is, I think, a subtle point where within the movie the two intertwine and it is difficult to distinguish because very much the layers of these backrooms are reflections of the mind, reflections of the subconscious, so to speak, and the monsters, quote unquote, that we encounter are reflections of the darker or repressed traumas and emotions of our characters that are manifested in the form of these kind of unthinking monsters, so to speak. Everything that has ever existed has a mirror image reflection or a reality to it. It takes a slightly darker approach essentially then, this movie, to an idea of alternate realities, where these essentially, where you can consider these reflections of this given reality or the reflections of the basic ground reality are essentially, like I've mentioned, these subverted mirror images of them or these diluted mirror images of them. There is an interesting link thus between the concepts in this movie and the idea of the world of similitude or of the world of ideas even, or this idea that there is a realm whereby, the realities of things as they are manifested in a different manner. In Islamic literature or Islamic terminology, you have the idea of alamul mithal. And on Judgment Day within the Islamic law, the spiritual realities of various deeds or states of being within certain humans will become apparent, the state of their hearts, the state of their actions. And hence you can actually understand from this that this kind of world of similitude essentially what it is, because the movie essentially portrays these diluted mirror images, these diluted reflections of the fundamental reality. It essentially serves to present the world of similitude, the world of the manifestations of these realities in a different form, as a form of horror then, as, this kind of uncanny valley of similitude, of these perverted, let's say, mirror image manifestations of the fundamental reality. It furthermore is a reflection of getting lost in the depths of one's mind as escapism from the outside world. Of course, with our main character, this is very much the case, as he explicitly says that he is comfortable, he is at home in these backrooms, so to speak, because, of course, he is dealing with his own struggles in real life, and it essentially acts as a form of escapism where he can escape into these realms, so to speak, rather than, deal with his own real life issues. It is dealing with the reflection of that thing, so to speak, in the depths of the subconscious. It is to battle with the monsters, demons, and angels, quote unquote, that traverse in the depths of one's mind, those traumas or repressed emotions in the depths of one's soul. And the mind is fundamentally a thing of infinite complexity, which we haven't fully understood. And hence, they are layers to the mystery of the mind which are yet to be traversed.